If you're watching this, there's a good chance you're thinking about retiring in the Philippines, or you already arrived. And I want to tell you something most people don't say out loud. The Philippines doesn't usually break retirement plans in year 5. It breaks them in year 1. Not because the country is bad, but because year 1 is where expectations collide with real life. In the beginning, everything feels like freedom. Warm evenings, friendly smiles, cheap meals, a slower pace. And then, slowly, the small inconveniences show up. A delayed delivery, a confusing process, a medical issue you didn't plan for, a budget that feels tighter than it did online, a relationship dynamic you didn't see coming. And most of the time, it doesn't happen dramatically. It happens quietly. Year 1 is the stress test. It's the year where you find out if your plan is real or if it only works when everything goes perfectly. This video isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to prepare you, because if you can make it through year 1 with clarity, years 2 through 10 get a lot easier. Here's why the first year matters so much. When you first arrive, you're not living a normal life yet. You're living in a transition. You don't know the systems. You don't know the rhythms. You don't know what's normal. So everything feels like an adventure. But adventure has a hidden cost: fatigue. In the first year, you're constantly solving problems that you never had to solve back home. Where do I get this medication? Why did the internet drop again? What does this government form mean? Who do I trust for repairs? Why is the price different today? And each problem alone is small. But here's the truth. Retirement plans don't crack from one big bill. They crack from 1,000 small stresses. Most people underestimate the emotional weight of living in a place where every simple task has friction. Not because the Philippines is worse. It's just different. And if your nervous system is used to convenience, the first year can feel like constant low-level tension. That's where regret starts. Not because you hate the Philippines, but because you didn't realize you were moving into a different operating system. Let's talk about the first crack most people feel: money. Not because the Philippines is expensive across the board. It can be affordable. But the internet sells a very specific fantasy. You can live like a king on a few $100s. That might be true in a certain lifestyle, in a certain location, with certain expectations. But most Western retirees don't move here to live like locals at the edge of comfort. They want air conditioning, reliable internet, clean water, a place that feels safe and comfortable, occasional Western food, private healthcare options, transportation that doesn't hurt their body. And that's where the budget tightens. The first year reveals the difference between cheap and comfortable. The first few months you might be spending less, but by month 3 or 4, you start upgrading. You buy better fans. Then you run the AC more. You find a better apartment. You switch to a more reliable internet plan. You start ordering certain foods you miss. It's normal. But for many retirees, that's when the math shifts. A budget that looked great on paper becomes fragile in real life. And if you're on a fixed income, fragility becomes anxiety. Here's what I've seen again and again. People didn't fail because they were irresponsible. They failed because they designed a budget that only worked if they never upgraded their comfort. But humans always upgrade comfort, especially when they age. And year 1 is when that starts. So the question isn't, can you live cheaply? It's, can you live sustainably in the lifestyle you'll actually choose? The second crack is usually healthcare, and this is where you need to hear me clearly. A lot of people talk about healthcare in the Philippines like it's one thing. It's not. Healthcare here depends heavily on where you live, how close you are to major cities, what kind of condition you have, whether you need specialists, whether you can pay quickly. In the first year, most retirees are healthy enough, so healthcare feels easy. A clinic visit, basic meds, a checkup. But then something happens. A fall, a high blood pressure episode, a dental emergency, a chest pain scare, a chronic issue that needs monitoring. And year 1 is when you find out. Do you have a plan, or are you improvising? Because improvising healthcare in a foreign country can be terrifying. Not because doctors are bad, but because you're far from your old system. You don't know the good hospital from the avoid that one. You don't know the processes. You don't know how fast you'll be seen. You don't know what you'll be asked to pay up front. This is why some expats move to a beautiful province, then quietly relocate back closer to Manila or Cebu later. Not because they stopped loving the province, because they realized aging has logistics. If you're 55, you can take risks. If you're 70, you don't want to gamble on distance when something serious happens. So year one becomes a moment of truth. Where am I living? And can my future self survive there? Now let's talk about the crack that wears people down the most. Not money, not healthcare, friction. The Philippines runs on a different tempo. Processes take longer. People communicate indirectly. Stuff doesn't always happen on schedule. At first, this feels charming. Then, after months, it becomes exhausting. A delivery doesn't show up. The repair person says tomorrow for 3 days. The internet tech comes between 8 and 5, but not sure when. A government document takes weeks. A simple errand turns into a half-day event. If you're younger, you shrug it off. If you're older, on a fixed routine, it can start to feel like you're losing control. And control is something retirees value more than they realize. Back home, you had predictable systems, clear customer service, direct communication. Here, you're learning to operate without those assumptions. This is where cultural frustration builds. And here's the dangerous part. Some expats interpret friction as disrespect. It's not always disrespect. Often it's just how things work. But if you fight it emotionally every day, you burn yourself out. That's why the first year is such a test. Because year one asks, can you adapt or will you stay in daily conflict with the environment? Now we get into a sensitive area, relationships. Some retirees come here single and meet someone. Some come here with a partner. Some come here to be closer to a spouse's family. This can be beautiful. But year one is when relationship reality sets in, because cultural expectations around family, money, support, responsibility can be very different. In many Filipino families, helping is normal. Sharing is normal. Family obligations are not optional. So if you are seen as the person with resources, pressure can build. It often starts small. A school expense, a medical bill. Can you help with this just once? And if you don't set boundaries early, it can become a pattern. Not because people are evil, because this is a culture where family support is built in. The key is not to become cold. The key is to be clear. The retirees who regret year one often say, I didn't realize what I was agreeing to. I didn't know how to say no without conflict. I didn't want to look selfish. And then months later, they realize they've committed to a lifestyle of constant financial obligation. This is where resentment grows, and resentment destroys relationships slowly. So in year one, you need two things: empathy, boundaries. Not one or the other. Housing is one of the biggest decisions people rush. In the beginning, retirees get excited. They see cheap labor. They see affordable homes. They imagine building their dream. And this is where year one causes regret. Because building or buying too quickly before you understand climate, workmanship standards, legal structures, maintenance realities can turn into a slow nightmare. Leaks, cracks, electrical problems, mold, termites, drainage issues during rainy season. A lot of this isn't malicious. It's just reality. And if you don't oversee your build, you'll often pay twice. The retirees who thrive do something boring. They rent longer. They live through rainy season. They learn the neighborhood. They learn how power and water behave there. They learn what they actually need. Then they decide. Year one is not the year to lock yourself into something permanent unless you fully understand what you're locking into. This is the crack nobody wants to admit. Purpose. Back home, even if you hated your job, your life had structure, work days, errands, friends, familiar routines. Here, at first, every day feels like a vacation. But a permanent vacation without meaning can become empty. And emptiness is dangerous. This is where some retirees drift into. Drinking more, isolating, doom scrolling online expat drama, unhealthy relationship dependency. Not because the Philippines caused it, but because retirement revealed what was already missing. A beautiful environment doesn't automatically create purpose. You still have to build it. The retirees who thrive build routines, walking groups, gym schedules, volunteering, learning the language, hobbies, friendships. They create small reasons to wake up. Year one is when you discover. Are you building a life or just living in a location? So how do you make year one easier? Not perfect, just easier. Here's the checklist I wish everyone followed. Start slow. Rent before you buy. Don't lock into a fantasy. Test both seasons. Rainy season changes everything: roads, mold, power, access. Track real expenses, not online budgets. Your real habits. Build redundancy, money access, backup internet, backup power, backup plans, and plan healthcare logistics. Know your nearest serious hospital. Know how you'll pay fast. Set boundaries early, kindly, clearly, before patterns form. Build purpose. Your retirement needs structure or it will invent chaos. If you do these things, year one becomes manageable. And once year one is stable, the Philippines can become what people hoped it would be. Not perfect, but peaceful. And here's the thing. When people fail in the Philippines, it's rarely because the country is cruel. It's because they arrived with a retirement plan built for vacation, not for real life. But the story doesn't end there. Because in the next video, we're going to talk about something YouTube rarely highlights. The expats who actually thrive here long term, and what they did differently. Not the loud ones. Not the dramatic ones. The quiet ones who built stability and stayed. If this video helped you think clearly, that next one will probably matter to you too. This is PH Life Unfiltered. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay smart, and choose with clarity, not fantasy.